Couple of things I'll just talk about. Really grateful today to see that the new album, Cast of Characters Live in Denton, is now on Amazon Music's The Pitch playlist. So a couple Amazon Music placements for my new record. If you haven't heard that, it's a record and a series of videos that are up now on YouTube. So you can check those out. And so it's tunes from the Cast of Characters record, which came out last year in February 28th. And then we were supposed to go on tour, but of course the world had other plans for us, so we kind of got sidelined a little bit. But that was super exciting, so I'm really glad about that. And I'm super excited to say that we have some really big announcements coming over the next few weeks between now and hopefully by the time we're at ITF. So the Trombone Festival posted something today about my involvement there, so I'm excited to be going to the ITF, the International Trombone Festival, this year. And that's, of course, in Columbus, Georgia in July. Some big announcements happening for the Jazz Trombone Day 2021 at UNT. So I'm excited about that. Brian asked, were you ever uncertain you'd secure a job as a musician? Did you have a day job? How long did it take after school until you could pay the bills only with music? Oh, yes, I was, of course, uncertain about being a musician, what that meant. Did I have a day job? The last time I had a day job, I mean, it depends if you think being a professor is a day job or not, because I guess I have that job. I mean, running a jazz label is kind of like a day job. It's a lot of, computer stuff and running marketing for people and promotions and all that. Like, maybe that counts as a day job. I don't know. I worked at a pizzeria in high school, and then I worked at a sub shop, sandwich shop. And then after that, I worked at a telemarketing center. That was the last day gig that I had. That was in college after my freshman year. And after that, it's been mostly all music. I mean, I did other things. When I finished at Juilliard, I signed up to be a caterer and work in catering. And I went through the training, and then I never took a gig. So I did all the training, and I never actually did anything. So I don't know how long. It was just, I didn't really give myself any other option. So I just did it. DJ asks, do you ever write contrafacts over tunes to record perform, or do you only use that type of thing as an exercise? The closest I've ever come to actually using a contrafact, the short answer is I usually use it as an exercise, but the closest I ever came was I had a tune called Mechanical Delay, and we played it on a couple of concerts at Juilliard, and I thought about recording it on my first record. It was a contrafact on You Stepped Out of a Dream. That's the closest I ever came, but I never recorded one. But they're good exercises to write a contrafact. I mean, also if you count rhythm changes or blues, then yeah, for sure, I've definitely recorded, some kind of version of that. You're at a gig and Wycliffe is in the front row drinking water right before you solo. Your slide feels like gravel. Do you A, spit on slide, B, grab Wycliffe's water, or C, gravel solo? C, gravel solo. I never worry about that stuff too much. I mean, if it's really, really bad, I'll do something about it, but if I'm on the gig and my slide isn't, it's like, all right, well, I just have to deal with this. Prepared answer is make sure you've got your slide lubricant in your pocket or on the stage somewhere so that you can actually fix the problem rather than just ignoring it, right? As jazz musicians, we improve our technique when playing transcriptions. What do you think are benefits of using classical etudes to improve technique as opposed to transcriptions? Both. You have to do both, because the classical stuff is going to train your technique, and then you'll be able to utilize that when you're playing the transcriptions. I like to use the Biche book. I like to use the Arbin's book. I like to use the Rochu book. I like to use the Koprosh book. I've tried to play the Charlier trumpet etudes on trombone. It's kind of hard. I like to play Bach cello suites. I like to do Bach partitas, like violin stuff. I'll play that stuff in the upper register to practice that. So it's a good combination of both. So what are some transcriptions you know by heart? Which of those have you learned in every key? I've never learned a full transcription in every key. That is not something that I would do. That sounds like a waste of time to me. I would take little segments, though, 100% lines, or like a head, like a well-composed head, like Donna Lee. Take that through the keys. What do I know? Which transcriptions do I know by heart? There's like a handful of Curtis, a handful of JJ that I know I could play for you right now. Like Blue Train, like Laura, like Mysterioso, like Yesterdays. These are all JJ. And then like Blue Train. That's probably the only one with Curtis. Or like 5 Spot After Dark. There's a great solo on. I could probably play that. Yeah, so I wouldn't take the time to take a whole transcription through all the keys. That's not something I would spend the time doing, It's kind of overkill, You need the phrases. You need the 2/5 language. You need all of that. You'd be better off taking down a lead through the keys, I think. Have you done open non-jazz jams before? If so, what are your thoughts on them? If not, then disregard. So yeah, I've played on non-jazz jams. I don't know. It's fun. You do something different. Obviously, I'm a jazz musician, so mostly I do jazz-related things. But I think that you've got to roll with the punches and be flexible. You got to be very, very flexible to different musical styles, you know. And so every once in a while, we're having to play in like a funk thing or an R&B thing or whatever. I did a set, not a set, but I sat in and kind of jammed with this drummer, Jojo Mayer, and his band. He has a band called Nerve. Played with them in Berlin like a couple years ago. And that's just like ambient groove-based stuff. Man, this is really lagging. I'm really sorry. So yeah, I've done it. It's fun. You got to be flexible to different styles. You got to transcribe different styles to get that language. It's just like anything else, you know. It's just like jazz, learn the language, and then you got to apply it in a different setting, like Fred Wesley solo, so you can play like that. Do you have a go-to jazz combo instrumentation that you like to use with trombone and tenors with full rhythm sections sound? Yeah, I like to do duo. I have 3 duo albums with a pianist named Chris Ziemba. Chris and I grew up together in upstate New York. Now he's the pianist in the Airmen of Note. So we have 3 albums. But yeah, my go-to lineup is tenor, trombone, and guitar. And then sometimes I switch out tenor for bass clarinet. And so we get trombone, guitar, and bass clarinet. When I started my first band, when I was finishing college, I would have just trombone and guitar as the main lineup. And then I was like, oh, we need a saxophone. So I added the saxophone back in. Do you agree with Miles when he said Bebop Stifles Creativity and that modal music let people play more melodically creative? Or do you think he said that because he was tired of the trends? I can't read Miles's mind, man. Seemed like a real temperamental cat. I think bebop is essential to learn, man. Like, whether or not you're going to play that way all the time is irrelevant to the fact that it's like really rich with vocabulary. It's really rich in understanding how harmony works, how functional harmony works. When you go and jump into modal stuff, you can just say like, oh, I'm switching modes, and then you just jump around and then anything goes, right? So it's kind of maybe not super useful. Yeah, I think he wanted to open up things for himself, you know. He didn't want to have to keep on playing the same thing. Modal music is more free. I think sometimes playing bebop is kind of like connecting the dots, you know, like paint by numbers or something. Because like there's a certain language that you play, like real bebop, you know, like if there's a certain language you play rhythmically and harmonically, and there's a certain language that you have to stick to, like you get too far in different directions and it doesn't really sound like bebop anymore. You know, I wouldn't say that when I play I'm always authentically bebop, you know, like my vocabulary drifts. And it's a challenge, you know, to stay so specific to that era and that thing. Like someone like Barry Harris, you know, super deep, still doing it in that tradition, you know. And think about Charlie Parker and Sonny Stitt and Dizzy Gillespie, compare them to like Miguel Zenon, and just thinking of like modern players, you know, like Ambrose or somebody, they're playing a trumpet and it's like totally different, you know, dealing with the same tunes, same vocabulary, same notes, but it's just totally different. Brian asked, do you ever practice sight reading changes? Do you ever practice sight hearing changes? That was something I was talking to somebody, Taylor, who sometimes comes on here and asks questions. He asked me about Juilliard stuff. That was something that was on the Juilliard audition, sight hearing, or like hearing some changes and playing along, or like changing keys and not telling you what's happening. There was a period where we had to hear stuff, like hear them change keys in a blues or rhythm changes, or hear them start playing a tune and kind of play along. But yeah, we do that in my studio all the time, being sight reading changes, like sight reading tunes. That's an important skill. It's a very important skill. It happens in big band all the time. You got to sight read the changes. So yes, is the short answer. What's your take on playing over lo-fi hip-hop beats? How would you implement your jazz chops while playing over those type of beats? You got to play less chromatically. It's more modal, you know. You can play bebop language, but then it just sounds like you're playing bebop language over the lo-fi kind of hip-hop beats. You got to be more melodic, I think. It's something I've been thinking about. I don't know if I really like it or not, though. I've been thinking about trying to practice, like, playing that style, though, because it's definitely, like, popular right now. And I'm down to, like, experiment always, you know. Your jazz chops, you have to kind of rein them in, you know. If you're playing crazy 2/5s over, like, one chord, that's cool to some people, and other people are just like, what is this guy doing? I always try to say, what does the music need right now? You know, that's my little phrase. It doesn't need you to play giant steps over lo-fi. All right, DJ asked what was my favorite part of this year's Jazz Trombone Bootcamp. My favorite part was getting to kind of check in with everyone, kind of like towards the end of the week, and hear about what were the takeaways. And plus that, and just the master classes, and getting to hear the like practical advice and the way that other people try to explain or explain better the things that I try to explain. And so for me, that's always super helpful to watch other people teach or watch other people explain the topics that I deal with also as an educator, trying to explain things. So that was super interesting to me, and getting to hear like what was helpful to everybody else was super helpful to me as well, and super interesting, and it's my favorite part. My favorite part is to see all the things that people have at the end of the week, to be like, I'm going to do this and this, and so it's super cool to be like, because in the moment sometimes you get like glazed over faces, you know, because there's just like a lot happening. On a recent Instagram post, you talked about the use of space and solos. Can you share a few examples, whether on the trombone or otherwise? I had a video with a clip of me like taking the horn off my face. I said like, hey, sometimes you just got to take the damn trombone right off your face, you know, to get yourself to shut up. Because, you know, Train talks about the same thing. You got to take it out, or somebody said that about Train. You got to take the horn out of his mouth to get him to stop playing or something. I mean, space is a very relative term. It could be short spaces or long spaces, but it always is, to me, the way that I think about it is it's a result of a phrase that comes to an end. If you play with logical phrasing, a phrase will end and the resultant will be space. Like, if you focus too much on like leaving space, you'll just stop playing. But if you come to the end of a phrase and then leave space, like, it's not even leaving space, it's just like letting the music breathe. That's kind of how I like to think about it more. So that's what I think of space, but there's nothing that like comes to mind. I mean, so there's a great example, one that I like to point out in terms of like interaction in space is JJ on Laura. Is like he plays some ba-doo boo 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 be doo, and then Tommy Flanagan plays ba-doo doo 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 ba ba doo ba ba beep be boo day beep be boo be ba boo be ba boo ba 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 boo be ba ba boo doo. So there's like short spaces and long spaces. I don't know. There's not like a clear example. Just what I try to say is like listen to your favorite soloists and like listen to how they finish a phrase and what happens after. That's how you get the drummer involved. That's how you get the rhythm section to play with you rather than against you, or like make them feel like you're playing over them. You don't want that. You want to feel like it's like this. At least I want it to feel like it's like this. Demetrius, any cool transcriptions that I've been working on? Not so much. I was working on some Chick Corea stuff before the summer. How do you stay ahead reading harder material? That's a good question. I mean, it's the same way you stay ahead when you're reading easier material, and that is you have to get familiar and be able to recognize patterns in music by just looking, right? So that's why the trickiest thing to read is a badly copied piece of music, or one that has unexpected accidentals, because to get good at sight reading, you got to, one, sight read a lot, and two, you have to start to recognize patterns. That's why, like, when you first start playing salsa music, if you're a jazz musician, it's really hard to get that rhythmic precision right away, because you're reading a totally different vocabulary of rhythms. Same if you go from reading jazz stuff to funk stuff, because all of a sudden you've got 16th note rests or like pop horn stuff, you know, like it's all different rhythmic vocabulary, so your brain has to process that. So you have to get used to reading those rhythms, and so you got to memorize these rhythmic patterns or scalar patterns or melodic patterns or triad patterns, all these different kinds of things. And so with more involved material, you have to sight read more harder stuff all the time. You just have to read stuff all the time. So get out the Arbin's book, read through stuff, get Etude books, read through stuff, find things on the internet, transcriptions, read all different kind of stuff, and just don't stop. Try to keep looking ahead. And the biggest thing though is you got to expect that you're going to read it correctly. Like, I hold myself to the standard of like, I'm going to play this perfect, and if it's not, I am not happy, you know. Like, I hold myself to a very high standard with sight reading, and if I'm not playing it perfectly, I'm not happy, you know. So holding yourself to that standard, sight reading all the time. You know, I try to sight read most lessons with my students because it's so important to being a working musician. If you want to be just an artist and do your own music, like, don't worry about it. But if you want to function in the scene and play with other people, you've got to be a good sight reader, especially in a big scene like New York or LA. It's non-negotiable, or London. Do you ever get overwhelmed with work, and what's your coping mechanism? Do you ever get overwhelmed? I mean, yes. The short, yes, I get overwhelmed for sure. My coping mechanism is running. I just bought new running shoes, so here's my new running shoes to prove that I do run. I had to retire the other ones; they were falling apart. I like to run. Yeah, that's about it. That's all I can do. I can just force myself to run. Also have a Peloton bike at home and do like exercise. That's basically my coping mechanism to get away from that music stuff or too much stuff to do, is to exercise. I'm trying to take more time to just like play with my dog. But I'm big into lists. I can't show you right now because I'm using all my devices, but I make lists, and I like to cross lists off, like going through stuff. I'm kind of into like productivity hacking and that sort of thing, but I'm trying to kind of let go of all of it, to be honest, because it's been kind of like an obsession for a while, and I'm just like, I just need to just be a little bit, What was the biggest advice / lesson Curtis gave you? The biggest lesson, man, is listening to his records, just like how much output he had, and hearing people talk about how he was playing live and like off of the records, just like live in person, how much trombone he was playing. I wish I could have heard that, the live Curtis Fuller from 1980s, that's what I hear. It was like, that was the vibe. But the thing I always say is that Curtis talked about, recording more original music, because that's what survives beyond your lifetime, not your improvised solos, like the melodies and what you contribute to the scene at large is kind of the thing that sticks, beyond your lifetime. So what's the most commercial / pop gig you've had? I've played plenty of horn section gigs. I mean, I've recorded some stuff with Mike Davis for some pop people. Did some Christmas records. A Christmas record of a guy named Brett Eldridge we made a Christmas record for. I mean, I did a lot of playing with this YouTube band called Postmodern Jukebox. I would put that in that category as well. What young players should we know about? Jack Courtwright, DJ Rice are two young guys that are in my UNT kind of circles that I know about that are doing great stuff. Another one of my students, Jackson Courtwright. One of my former students from Florida State plays with the Dirty Dozen brass band. If you're into that kind of New Orleans vibe, his name's TJ Norris. He's doing great things. A lot of cats coming out of Michael Deese's studio. Chris Glassman, great bass trombonist. Alton Senkelar. If you don't know Corey Wilcox, he's really great, but he's my age, so I don't know if that's young or old. If you like Andy Clausen, he runs this band, co-runs this band called the Westerlies. If you don't know Andy, he's really, really great, doing great things. Jeffrey Miller is in New York, from New Orleans. He's doing great things. Kalia Van Devender, you can find her on Instagram, I'm sure. In the pop commercial world, there's a guy named Darius Jones. He's played with with everybody, man. He's playing with all these people. All horn section stuff, pop stuff, doing his great original stuff. Reggie Chapman, if you don't, I mean, he's older than me, but on the West Coast, let me go. There's more people. I gotta get them all out here. So like Ido Mushalam, if you don't know Ido, he's killing. He's in LA. He did the Monk Institute. Eric Miller, another Monk Institute guy. John Hadamiya out there too. And then there's some guys that are Marshall Jilks' students up at MSM doing great things. Jack Kotz is one guy I met. Joe Giordano, I think. Yeah, Giordano. No shortage of great trombone players out there these days. If you don't know Javier Nero, Javier is great. We went to Juilliard together. He's in the U.S. Army Blues now. Just got the lead trombone job there. He's a couple years younger than me. So it depends, again, how you define young. Advice for condensing your bio to less than 200 words. Yes. Let somebody else read it and let them cut the stuff out, because there's a lot of stuff that you think is important that's not really that important. Or there's like shorter ways to say things. You got to find the highlights. It's hard to get it down to that short, but I find having somebody who's good at writing, look at it and say like, what's essential here and what's not essential, because often what we think is essential is not essential. And it's really easy for me. If I read your bio, DJ, I could be like, oh no, get rid of this, because I'm not attached to it, and you're attached to it, and I'm attached to my bio. I think this is important. I think this. Oh, they got to know about, but it's like they don't got to know about anything. They can go find out more if they want to. So just, it's a highlight reel, Get somebody else to read it. Try to make it interesting. This is the thing about bios. I'll tell you this. I'll put on my media company mindset here for a second and talk about bios. Your bio is probably too boring. I'll tell you that. You know, we want to be serious, and we copy the way that other people's bios are written, that are like our heroes or like someone that we look up to, or a professor or something like that. 9 times out of 10, that person did not think twice about their bio. Somebody wrote it, and it's the most boring thing. If you have an interesting bio, it actually can hold somebody's attention, and they might actually want to read it. When it's just like a list of so-and-so shared the stage with blah, 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 and you're talking about guest artists from your college experience, it's not going to cut it. It's not interesting. It's not interesting to read. There's nothing in there that somebody can like use to like highlight a performance. You know, you want to put some stuff in there that is remarkable. You know, somebody remembers, you know, my bio has gone through some edits. There was a time when it was kind of outrageous. Like in 2015, 2016, there was some funny stuff that a guy had written that I left in there because I was like, man, I wanted to see if people said it. And then people started bringing it up to me in interviews, and I was like, oh, it's working. People are reading the bio because it's weird. Yeah, he said something like flying through the trees like a winged squirrel or something something you would never expect to read in somebody's bio. You know, being interesting can be a tough task, but is an important one if you want people to remember you. You know, I'm excited for the rest of the summer. I've got a book coming out really soon. The Trombone Festival is coming out soon, and that's going to be fun. I got announcements about Jazz Trombone Day, which is going to be really great, and then a new record is almost finished for the fall. So a bunch of things happening. But at any rate, hopefully next week we'll get the tech back running at full speed here. So thank you for bearing with me, and thanks for checking out the stream. We will catch everybody next week with another episode. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch you all very, very soon.